started. Hi, everyone. My name is Mary Brown. I'm the guide manager at Alpine Ascents International. Thank you so much for hopping on during your lunch hour or later than lunch hour, depending on where you're logging in from, to talk about one of the most iconic mountains in the lower 48, Tahoma, aka Mount Rainier. Tahoma is just one of the many names for Washington's highest volcano, which means mother of the waters. Since time immemorial, the Kautz, Muckleshoot, Nisqually, Puyallup, Scotquotchin Island, I totally mangled that, so sorry, Yakima, and Coast Salish peoples have called this land home. If you want to take a deep dive into the history of the mountain, check out this awesome book, Tahoma and Its People. It's really good. This afternoon, we're diving into what it takes to climb Tahoma with Alpine Ascents, covering everything from training and gear to what you can expect on the climb. And who better to guide us through than the legend herself, Lyra Pierotti. Lyra is a senior IFMGA mountain guide, basically the PhD of mountain guiding, with a wealth of experience guiding and climbing across the globe, from the granite peaks of the Sierra Nevada to the Alps, Alaska, South America, Antarctica, and beyond. Originally on track to become a research scientist, she's traded academia for the School of Rock and has built a career guiding, climbing, and coaching through her business Momentum. She also loves cross-country skiing and radicchio, which makes her extremely well-rounded, in my opinion. Lyra has been guiding at Alpine Ascents since 2014, so you're in good hands. Before we get started, officially, a couple housekeeping notes. If you have any questions at all during the presentation, pop them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we'll answer them at the end of the presentation. And throughout the presentation, I'll be popping helpful links and information in the chat, so do keep an eye out. I'm actually going to get us started with some pre-climb logistics. I'm going to share my screen. Let me know if you can see it. Okay, share screen here. Screen. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Huh? Hopefully that's a yes. Okay, so first, some important pre-climb logistics. On the screen, you will see the logistics. Okay, so first we'll see the overview, which is a little bit about the climb, some history and resources, which are really interesting, a great read. And then we're going to go over to the logistics tab. That's where we'll start. For our 3-day climb, it starts with a 2 p.m. gear check at our Seattle office the day before your climb. So if your climb starts on May 30th, your gear check is May 29th. It's at 2 p.m. We recommend people arrive like maybe 10 minutes early just so they can find parking, and it usually lasts around 90 minutes, and that's where you'll pick up all of your rental gear, try it on, make sure your boots fit, and one of the guys on the climb will be there to walk you through every item on the gear list, as well as give you an overview of what to expect the next day. And that meeting is required. We get a lot of questions about if people can do virtual gear checks, but it's really important for our risk management that people show up in person. And see, that's the gear check. A lot of people who are coming in from outside of the Seattle area want to know, like, what is the closest lodging or what do we recommend? There is a tab as well, lodging. The Marqueen is less than a block away from Alpine Ascents, and a lot of people stay there. That way they can just walk right over on day one of their climb and hop in the van. Super convenient, pretty nice, lots of great restaurants in the neighborhood as well. Like I said, the gear check is at 2 p.m. the day before the climb. You'll want to bring everything on the gear list to the gear check. You'll pick up all your rental gear, like I said. It doesn't have to be packed in a neat package. It can just be in duffel bags or whatever, and you'll explode all your gear at the gear check and go through it piece by piece. So it doesn't have to look good when you bring it in. This is, we have a little video of sort of, it'll go through every item on the gear list and what to expect. And then once the gear check is over, how to pack all that stuff in your bag. Let's see. Food. On our 3-day summit climb, we do provide on-mountain breakfast and dinners. And a lot of people are curious, like, what will I be eating on the climb? Here is our menu. It's all real food. The guides are cooking for you. Day 1, we have a really delicious chicken burrito with salsa and guacamole and sour cream. We have sort of an egg McMuffin situation for breakfast the next day. We have a cheeseburger meal, and then a classic on-mountain meal for summit day, some oatmeal. Off to the side, we also have, we can accommodate almost any dietary restriction, whether you're vegan, gluten-free, don't do dairy. We get a lot of people coming through Alpine Ascents, and we're pretty good at making sure you stay well fed, no matter what your dietary restriction. And there's a spot to note those dietary restrictions or allergies on the registration form. Let's see, what other things to note on logistics tab. Tipping, a lot of questions about tipping. We have a recommended tipping amount for a 3-day climb of $150 to $225. And you can just give that amount to one of the guys on the team and they'll split it amongst themselves. So not required by any means, but it is very appreciated by the guide staff. Let's see, tipping. And then last but not least on my end, training for the climb. We'll talk about this more, especially because Lyra is certified strength and conditioning, strength and, wait, what is it? I forget, strength and conditioning specialist coach?
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't find my mute button. Yes, strength and conditioning specialist.
Yes, so yeah. She knows it all. On the training tab, we'll have our expectations for the level of fitness you should show up with. Our 3-day climb up the DC doesn't have any prior training requirements, like you don't have to have climbed a mountain previously, but you do need to show up with a high level of fitness, even though it's an entry-level climb, it is still really physically challenging. So do take the opportunity to look over this tab really closely. Let's see. Your fitness test for this climb is to be able to travel at a pace of 1,000 vertical feet per hour with the required pack weight, which is around 35 pounds. And the expectation is to build to this point over time. And we partner with Uphill Athletes for all the training plans that are on our website. They wrote Training for the New Alpinism. They're sort of like, I don't know, they're sort of the ones who wrote the book literally on training for alpinism. So our training plan is really good, totally free to follow. And we have the 3 different training phases on there. So if you get a chance, take a look. And that is all from me about the pre-trip logistics. Lyra, did I miss anything before you take it over?
No, I think that's great. I always appreciate the conversations about training. It's really, and these descriptions and the literal book that they wrote on training has been so helpful to understand what it means to be a mountain athlete and what all the things that you need to be able to do. And I think one of the things that is good to say to everybody is like, remember that that's what we expect you to arrive able to do is 1,000 feet per hour, given all of the variables that arrive in the mountains. And so that means with that heavy pack, right? And that means like having a little extra, being exceedingly confident is going to help a lot. And that can mean extra, well, just a lot of angles to your training, which includes putting yourself in a similar environment wherever you can, or having an excess of cardiorespiratory fitness, or an excess of strength, or an excess of positive attitude, like for real, is part of it. And we noticed there's a great quote from older mountain guide Scott Fisher, he said, it's not about the altitude, it's about the attitude. And the strategy with which we climb, which we'll go over next for all the on-mountain logistics, climb itself, we take some of the challenge away as we get higher on the mountain, but we add other ones. And so there are so many ways for folks to come in with either a really limited bandwidth for the uncertainty and the variabilities in the mountain environment. And the more you can just build out your abilities within the things you control, climbing fitness is a huge one, then you just find that you're a little bit more at ease and more comfortable, and able to take on unexpected challenges. So training is really important. Those resources are fantastic. And it's always, you know, working with someone. There are a number of professionals out there that do one-on-one coaching as well that we can send you to. I'm one of them. And then there are quite a collection of guide types and mountain athletes out there in the world now that understand how to individualize. So if that like rote programming is just like, gosh, this isn't working for me, you can always reach out for more help. And it's worthwhile. These sports are such a long time to train for, that viewing it like a lifestyle and integrating it in a sustainable way is really important. So now why? Let me pull up the why, the mountain. That is why. Let's see. I'm going to, whoops. Oh no. I shared the wrong thing first. Stand by. There. Did I do it? Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Oops. Okay, so you'll see here the Alpine Ascents. Oops. Nope. Got it. Have you on my other screen here? Hold on, let me fix that. Stand by, stand by, stand by. Technology, oh my gosh, come over here. Okay, I think that's what I want. Oh my gosh. Okay, now did I do it? Great. Thank you. All right. Before we dive in, I do want to acknowledge that we gather upon, those of us in the Seattle area in Western Washington, a good portion of Washington, we gather upon the ancestral lands of the Muckleshoot, Puyallup, Nisqually tribes, amongst others. These communities have lived on and stewarded the lands surrounding Tahoma. There's various different pronunciations throughout those communities since time immemorial, and they continue to do so today. We recognize this land acknowledgement is one small step toward true allyship, and we commit to uplifting the voices, experiences, and histories of the indigenous people of this land and beyond. If you would like to know more about what Alpine Ascents is doing to honor the land, Mary in particular has been very active in engaging with these longtime locals and helping to merge our communities with NPS, with those groups, and with the guide services. And that certainly is one of the big reasons that I have been at Alpine Ascents for so long, is really just this like depth of the work that we do. As I get older, that means more and more. Whoops. Oh my God. How did that work? There we go. The Puyallup people are one of the tribes that referred to what we call Mount Rainier as Tacoba or Tahoma. 1792 European explorers arrived. Captain George Vancouver was the first European that saw the mountain. And apparently this was from Kiro 7 News in Washington, quoted, "He just starts naming everything arbitrarily. He sees a mountain and decides to name it after his best friend, Peter Rainier." Ironically, Peter Rainier was an admiral in the British Navy who battled against the United States in the Revolutionary War. So there's a little comedy for our modern world and the naming of these mountains. Paradise to Camp Muir. So after that gear check, next day you arrive early. You can fall asleep on the shuttle bus. That's usually what I do. And then we arrive, we grab coffee near the park, we drive into the park, and we start walking uphill. Beautiful summer day in this photo that you can see right here. That first day is long, as all of them are, and the heaviest. You'll have most of all of your equipment on your back, and it depends on the season. It'll be 4.5, 5 miles, depending on how circuitous things get by the end of the season. It's nice early season when there's lots of snow because it's a little more direct, and if the snow is soft, that can be a little more challenging. So it's really, the mountain has many moods, and it's almost 5,000 feet of gain. You can see on the map here, that first leg. We stop every hour, more or less. Be ready for hour to hour 20, and we'll take about a 10-minute break. The first day we can be a little bit more relaxed, but be ready, and in your training and practice, get accustomed to about an hour and 15 and a 10-minute break, and then move. The idea is this is a maintenance stop, not a rest stop. So a little food and a little water will get you a long way. And if you stop before you need it, you're usually better off. We then arrive at Camp Muir, which was originally named Cloud Camp by John Muir after his attempt or his summit in 1988. Ironically, he named it that thinking that it was like a pleasant, sheltered place from the wind. As you will learn on the mountain, it is not sheltered from the wind at all, but it is a cool spot. It's really beautiful. John Muir also had a hilarious summit of Mount Shasta, and he was famous for going up in a storm and getting just like blasted, and then warming himself at the hot coals inside of the crater. So he's got a funny climbing track record, that one. I think if I had guided him, I would have been like, what on earth? Gombu shelter at Camp Muir. It's a little saddle, and parked right on that saddle, getting blasted by years and years of wind, as you can see in this photo, is this Gombu shelter. It's named for Nawang Gombu Sherpa. He was a longtime guide. First to summit Everest twice, longtime director, Himalayan Mountaineering Institute, nephew of the famous Tenzing Norgay, and youngest on the 1953 British Everest expedition. Right off the ridge, so in the photo of the front door, you can see the ridge up on the left, but lower on the ridge, just up and over, that's where the Gombu shelter is. And so you walk up and over the ridge, and tucked down in a hole, slightly more sheltered, is the weather port. We put that up every year and take it down at the end of the season. And this is the Camp Muir restaurant, pretty cozy. And that's where we will have everybody gather for meals. That next morning, this is the view looking down from the weather port. You can see the little castle-like structures and all those little huts. Those are bathrooms. So those bathrooms are pit toilets, composting toilets, kind of a mix of all things, and for the public. They're not flush toilets, obviously. That would be hard at 10,000 feet on the ridge. And what else about this spot? You can see down that way. So if you keep looking, you can see Mount Adams in the distance. That's going down the south side down towards along the Muir snowfield, the route that we came up. This is the point at which cell service becomes limited. So right at the ridge, you get pretty good cell service, and you'll be able to contact your family, and then you pop over the ridge and it starts to go away for a while and becomes spotty on the rest of the climb. On day 2, we bring you over to the weather port. We do have breakfast, a nice morning. It's one of my favorite days in the mountains, one of my favorite work days. It's a really lovely time to just enjoy where you've ended up, have a nice cup of coffee. And then we dive into a thorough snow school where, as you can see here, we're learning self-arrest, how to walk efficiently on snow, and rope travel. We do a little bit of cramponing on rocks because that's necessary for the climb most of the year. And then we head up to camp for the early afternoon where we do go to high camp, and that's peering our route across to Cathedral Gap. You can see on the map here. So you walk across, there's a little footpath there, and then you walk up a scrappy dirt trail-ish up and over Cathedral Gap. Here it is again. There's that scrappy trail here and up and over Cathedral Gap there. Not a massive day. You're just going from 10 something from low 10s to about 11,000 feet. It's like a total of 1,000-foot climb and about a mile, and takes an hour and a half. But you are starting at 10,000 feet, so you might start feeling it, and that's normal. Here we are up and over the gap, walking to Ingram Flats Camp. We work hard all season long to maintain this camp, and anytime there's threat of weather, we have to pull it and bring it down the mountain because it can just get squashed if it's not tended. So the guide team may at times have logistics where they send a couple guides ahead and maintain camp. And then it's like the coolest thing to arrive to. And it tends to be, from a lot of our reviews, we tend to hear this is one of our guests' favorite mountain experiences, to just like, how often do you get to go sleep on a glacier? It's, yeah, truly special. Then view, sunset, get to bed early because we're going to get up real early. And that's looking to the, I guess that's sunrise. That's looking to the east at Little Tahoma. Early morning. From there, by moving to that high camp, we do save a little bit of time and gain. So summit day is only 3,300 feet of gain, but then we come all the way back down and get to the trailhead in one day. So that 9,000 feet can be brutal. This is where all of your strength training for your legs is really going to do its magic. Your cardiorespiratory fitness is not as relevant during that descent as is your leg strength and just the amount of mileage. So don't forget your strength training. It's not just about going uphill. Here is one of our ladders, late season. So if you're on a later season climb, or anytime, sometimes the route just requires ladders. And on this route, the park allows us to install ladders across the crevasses so that we can continue to climb the route and access critical parts of that route. So like the Disappointment, this is accessing the Disappointment Cleaver, which is a direct rocky climb up and it gets us through a lot of very broken glacier. So sometimes that's just part of the nature of it. Now we're looking from roughly the top of the Disappointment Cleaver down. And these names, if they are wacky and unfamiliar to you, that is correct. This is the only mountain that uses these kinds of terms. And the Tahoma, Mount Rainier, was a epicenter of mountaineering in North American history. And so they named some of the features entirely, whereas other places you might call this a ridge or an arête, probably a ridge, but here we call it a cleaver, and it makes a ton of sense. This language was developed on this mountain for this mountain, and this cleaver literally splits the Ingram Glacier and divides it. So you'll see that in as you're climbing it and you're on this ridge looking at glacier that's cleaved in front of you and spilling to either side of you. It's quite cool. More ladders. And that alpenglow color, that's one of my favorite things. So this is probably like 5 in the morning or so. Very high on the route. Very pink. More sunrise. That's Little Tahoma again on the bottom right. Big crevasses on the bottom left. There's Mount Adams again in the distance. That one is just under 13,000 feet. And sometimes one of my favorite climbs, I was climbing with Lakpa Sherpa, and he, at the top of Panorama Point, one of our guests looked to their right towards Mount Adams. We just popped above the clouds, and our guest asks, Lakpa, what is that mountain? And Lakpa looks to his right over at Mount Adams, and he says, man of little words, which is always one of my very, very soft spoken and very poignant. He looks over his shoulder and he says, ah, wrong turn. And I started laughing, and it took a minute until they understood he was being funny. So it does look like a little miniature, mini Tahoma. Beautiful, another beautiful mountain. One can strongly recommend. It is for any of you that are just considering climbing the DC or Emmons or even the Kautz in the future. Starting on something like Mount Adams is a great warm-up. It gives you a lot of information about how altitude goes for you with less stress of the mountain. It gives you, you're not on a glacier for the standard route there, so you can kind of just walk, not be worried about how the whole glacier mountaineering thing works, walk on snow, learn the mechanics, and get familiar with altitude. So if you are looking for a progression, can recommend. Okay. Summit shots. They're kind of boring. There's like, you're always just like, well, what mountain is that? I don't know. All I see is sky. But when it's yours, you know it. And it's really special. So here are our teams. One is at the Columbia Crest and one is inside of Columbia Crest, depending on whether the inside of the crater is where we call the summit. And then we may continue on, depending on the season, up the rim. It kind of changes where the glacier is throughout the season as to like what looks the highest. And then all of our smelly gear all the way back down. And we throw our smelly gear back into the trailer and head out of there. Here you can see the long descent. And this is the bottom photo, shows an old route that fell out of shape. Oh, wait, where are we? Oh yeah, no, that was still running that time of year. Kind of wild. So that shows how complex it can get. The guides work hard to maintain the route. And it changes. There are times all season long that it will fall out of shape for a limited amount of time, and then we're working hard to reroute it. We go up there with pickaxes and metal shovels. So ridiculous. Literally like manufacturing a way up the mountain. You look back down at what you have to do. You can see here's the route through here. And it is quite impressive. It's quite cool. A lot of this stuff you're working hard in the morning and it's dark, and then you turn around and it's light out and you have a little more energy because you're not like huffing and puffing as much to go uphill, and you're like, what did I do? And that's where your training and hopefully having arrived with a good nutrition plan, excellent fitness, all of that adds up to give you that bandwidth that you need to take on the stress of the descent. And here we are, heading down. So that is a bit about the mountain. And I'm going to show you, for those of you that like maps. There we go. Do you still see my screen with the map now? Great, thank you, Mary. Here is my new favorite feature on CalTopo. If you're familiar with this mapping, you can have two dimensions, yeah, 2D, normal map. So here's Camp Muir to the summit. There's Ingram Flats. Here's our Kautz route and our Emmons. If I zoom out, I can even show you Mount Adams down here. There's Mount Adams. Oh, I'm sorry, there's Mount Adams. This is Mount St. Helens. A little crater. So that's some of, and the Goat Rocks Wilderness. That's more snowy stuff you'll see early in the season. Okay. Let's then, this 3D feature is super cool. Here is a map version of that route. Here's our first day to Camp Muir along the Muir snowfield. It is technically a glacier. It has minimal crevasses, and it's like isolated and not flowing in the same way of the bigger glaciers. It doesn't have a high elevation accumulation zone. So it's kind of a dying glacier, I think, is how we would consider it. But it does sometimes have little cracks, not enough to rope up. We follow and maintain a route there that is well monitored, and the hazards are highly visible. So we walk up that one without a rope, pick up our ropes at Camp Muir, and then we rope up around. Here's Muir to the flats. Here's Flats Camp right there. And then there we go up. Here's the Flats Camp. We go up and usually across to get onto the cleaver. Then we climb up the cleaver and do a series of shenanigans around the cracks to get to the summit. And we come back down the same way. The Emmons, for those of you looking for the next step up, the major difference between a DC climb, the Disappointment Cleaver, and the Emmons climb is pack weight. And the fact that you have to carry everything from the beginning, and it's 4 days. That means day one, you're hiking up a long trail. It seems fairly mellow, but your pack is heavy. So this is one of the most important trips to really train that pack weight. We're talking like 60 pounds, like, I think, but silly heavy. Very trainable, but you must train for it. Then day two, you're on the glacier, interglacier, on snow. Again, similar to that snowfield, may or may not be roping up. So you head up here, up and over a ridge, around the corner, and you end up at Camp Sherman, beautiful campsite on the mountain. Excuse me. Then we climb on the Emmons, we climb between the Emmons Glacier and the Winthrop. So here's the Emmons, and just like I mentioned, the Disappointment Cleaver is over here, cleaving the Ingram from the Emmons. And then you go around the corner, and you've got the Emmons here spilling down this way, and the Winthrop spilling down the other way, Camp Sherman right in the middle. And we're working our way up the corridor, this is called, to the summit. There's our summit, pretty cool. There's your crater. Then the next step, at least on this mountain, there's lots to be done on Colshan or Mount Baker, for example. In like before, after, in between, any climbs you might want to do on this one. The Kautz is probably one of my favorite routes, not because it's easy, and it's also a very heavy pack comparable to the Emmons. And neither of those things are, like, I don't love carrying heavy packs. That's not my favorite thing about this sport, but it is a spectacular route and just very enjoyable climbing. Fairly steep. It feels secure, if that makes sense. It does get blasted with weather, and between like the weather, because it's a southwest facing route, a lot of our storms come from the southwest, and it gets hammered. And I don't know if I'm not selling it at all. But it just has a really nice ambiance. It feels challenging and real and exciting at times, and a good one to train for, a good one to work hard for. It's a huge payoff. You do some pitched climbing most of the year, and that's right up here. So there's like some steep snow and ice where you're setting an anchor and going up one at a time or two at a time, depending on, your guide will go up and then bring the two of you up. And really it's just, all those challenges make it really feel rewarding. And so if that is something you're considering, I can strongly recommend it. And again, all of these routes, you go back down the way we came up, more or less. Rule. Okay, I think let me grab my notes, Mary. Oops.
Unmute. I have one thing to add. If you are thinking about, you want to you want to climb the mountain, and you're like, oh, you just saw the Emmons or the Kautz, you're like, oh, you're so intrigued. We also have mountaineering courses that incorporate those summits as part of a bigger course. So for example, our 8-day course on Tahoma, you spend all 8 days learning mountaineering skills on the Emmons side of the mountain, and then that culminates in a summit attempt via the Emmons. Very heavy pack weights on that one, but really great training if you have Denali or like climbing in Alaska in your horizon. The Kautz climb, you can climb it as a standalone 4-day summit climb, or if you want to do it as part of a mountaineering course, our 10-day course, you spend 6 days on Colshan, aka Mount Baker, learning all of the ropes, haha, pun intended, of glacial mountaineering. So like how to use your crampons, ice axe, set up a rope team, do crevasse rescue. You summit Colshan via either the Squawk Glacier or the Easton Glacier, and then you come out on day 6, you overnight at a hotel, and then the next day you go to the park and climb and start your 4-day ascent of the Kautz. And then if you want to climb the Disappointment Cleaver as part of a larger course, like you have the time, you want to get 2 summits in, we'll spend 6 days on Colshan, come out on day 6, and the next day you'll go climb the mountain as part 3 days on the Disappointment Cleaver. So just something to think about if you want to learn the mountaineering skills, but also summit 2 mountains. Well, on the 8th day, you'll only summit 1, but it's a big one. That's all.
We can definitely hear a lot. Guides and clients alike love those programs. It's like such a great opportunity to elevate your skill, especially for those who might live in the Washington, like the Pacific Northwest. I often, with mountaineers groups, sometimes if you're learning and you want to be climbing on your own with folks, the mountaineers can take the really great and awesome low cost ways of getting into mountaineering. And it'll take you like a year. So sometimes the investment in one of our courses can be well worthwhile if you do want a boost in your own climbing career. And yeah, and then we're psyched on that, because then if you ever come back, that just means you have the more and more skill for us to go further and higher and have more fun and just keep elevating your skills. Yeah. Mary, are you going to talk about renting?
Oh, gear? Yeah, I'll talk about
Yeah.
gear.
Great.
I know we said we do Q&A at the end, but since we were just talking about the Kautz, let's say, Lyra, you got the Kautz a bunch. In June, is it going to be more like steep snow climbing or pitched ice climbing, or some kind of combination of the 2?
Yeah. In June, some Junes are like that. We would still be skiing the route. It's very steep extreme skiing, but reasonable. So that tells you a little bit. So like booting up can feel very secure. And then our last trip in really dry years, I have had entirely like bulletproof, not bulletproof, but very, very firm blue ice, like proper ice climbing. And you end up doing like 4 pitches of ice climbing. So full range, super conditions dependent, season dependent.
Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about renting gear. Let me share my screen. Here's the button, share screen. Okay, can you see my screen? Yes, okay. So we've been talking mainly about the 3-day summit climb on Tahoma in this presentation, but the gear list explanation I'm about to give holds true for all of our climbs. So if you go to the 3-day climb page, you'll see the gear list. It's one of these tabs. And here's the gear list. We do require that you bring everything on the gear list. It's a big safety. It's part of the way we manage risk, is making sure everyone has all of the gear on the gear list. Let's say something happened on the mountain and there was a crevasse fall, like having your big puffy jacket, it's super key, even if the weather seems like nice, warm, and sunny. So that's a little preface there. Depending on what time of year you're climbing, early season, so like late April, May, most of June, you'll probably be in double boots. Double boots are pretty key when we have a lot of snow on the mountain, because they have removable liners that you can take out of your boots and dry out in your sleeping bag overnight. Which keep your feet warm and dry. With the single boots, there is no removable liner. And if your boots get wet on day one, because you're hiking through deep snow, they will stay wet for all the days you're on the mountain. So that's kind of, and double boots are also warmer as well. So more likely to keep your feet dry and also warm. But if you are doing a climb where you're sort of at kind of at between an early season and sort of a mid-season climb, our gear department will reach out in advance, let you know what sort of boots you'll be using on your climb, because it is also forecast dependent as well. So everything on the gear list, everything that we rent, you'll see a gray box, rent, and it'll get added to your rental basket at the bottom. You don't have to pay for your rentals until you come for your gear check. That way, maybe there's some things you didn't actually need to rent or some things you need to add. You try them all on. So you'll settle up at your gear check. What other things to note? We don't rent everything we rent almost everything, not all the things. Like, we don't rent socks and base layers, but everything else. Headlamps, ice axes, crampons, most of your outer layers, mid layers, we all rent. If you are new to mountaineering or new to spending a lot of time in an alpine environment, and you're a little bit confused about like, what is a hard shell jacket versus a soft shell jacket, we have a really helpful gear lexicon underneath further resources. And let's see, open up the PDF. Here we go. And it will walk you through every piece of gear that's on any gear list for any mountain or course that we have, whether it's a heavyweight balaclava, not baklava. I always do that. I'm like, don't say baklava, but I say baklava. The buffs, the sun hats, sunglasses, everything will have an explanation, and then some of our stat picks that we get from our guides. Like, what sort of, I don't know, what are our guides' favorite gaiters, for example. So if you want to take a deep dive into some of the gear, check out the gear lexicon. That's kind of everything I got about the gear list. If you do have questions about, let's say you're signed up for a 3-day climb or a 4-day Emmons climb, and you don't know if your sleeping bag is appropriate for the temperatures you're going to encounter, you can always email our gear department at gear@alpineascents.com. They're like our resident gear experts. Just send them the make and model of your sleeping bag, and they'll get right back to you with an answer and their recommendation. It's super, super helpful. They're in the office 5 days a week. So there's that. Lyra, did I miss anything with the gear? Anything you want to add? Any like gear tips or anything?
Yeah, I've got like some hot tips for gear. Do you mind still sharing your page?
Just kidding. The same one I was looking at.
The gear list.
Gear list.
Yeah. Or I can bring it up. I got it.
I got it. I got you.
You got it?
I can drive the screen
Perfect.
while you talk. Okay.
Yeah,
years.
I'll call out the best hot tips and common like questions. One of the things that we ask that everyone bring is full side zip pants. These are hard shell pants, not rain pants. That means it's a difference in the material and durability and both wind and snow and rain protection factor. And those are critical. That is, again, just like Mary said about the down jacket, even if it looks like it might be warm, think about like like you need to basically have your little turtle shell on your back. So like if you have to hunker down, you can be home anywhere on the mountain. That's important on big mountains that create their own weather patterns, which is what Mount Rainier Tahoma does. It creates its own, it does its own thing up there. So the full side zip pants, those are critical. The reason for the full side zip and not 3/4, not like most, except for like the little band, it's that you need to be able to put them on in emergency with crampons on your feet. So you're not going to be stepping through pants with small swords on your feet. Okay, so that one's important. Down insulation is another one that we get a lot of questions around. Down, it is easy to look at the down fill weight and think that higher number, that means warmer, right? Not quite. That fill weight, which would be like high quality would be 800 to 900, low quality would be 700 to 600. 600 would be real bad. That is the amount of loft per weight. It's a number that tells you that. The higher the number, the more loft you get for the weight of the jacket. And Mary is so graciously demonstrating this is what a Rainier Tahoma quality puffy looks like. That's the amount of puffiness. With a lot of jackets, we can deduce just how warm it would be based on the weight of the jacket and the down fill quality. There's some other factors like the material, but the material can add warmth as well, depending on how penetrable it is to air and how well it keeps the air inside of the baffles. And that means if it keeps the air in the baffles better, it doesn't just like squeeze easily and lose all of the air and then puff back up, then you're losing all of the warm air you just spent time warming up. So lots of technology behind that, but it is not as simple as just bigger number, warmer jacket. Feel free to read that gear lexicon for more on that. There you go. Ooh, that's a good one. There's so much puffy in that room. Hood is critical, as you can see on all of those. Remember, it's like putting on a sleeping bag with arms and legs. You want to be able to just like hunker down on the mountain if needed. Next favorite thing is quite on the opposite side of all that spectrum. It's the sunshade hoodie. Ironically, here we talk about being cold and like ready for anything. A lot of that climb, especially lower on the mountain, you're going to be battling sun from all directions, literally. The snow reflects 80 to 90% of UV rays. So you're going to be like plastered in the best zinc sunscreen you possibly can, and then also tucked in with a ball cap or something similar. And that sun hoodie allows you to cover your ears without getting too hot. They're usually light in color. It used to be the mark of the Pacific Northwest Guide, and now everyone has caught on. So it used to be that I climbed any mountain kind of anywhere in the West, and if I saw a sun hoodie, I'd be like, oh, that person's from the Northwest and they're a guide. And now, lo and behold, everybody has caught on that there's some good reasons why the guides have been wearing these goofy light colored base layer hoodies for a long time. Footwear, gear lexicon for that again. This will be dictated to you by the office at some point when they know if we are shifting during the season from double boots to single boots. Later it is a little bit lighter, a little more comfortable to climb in a single boot, but there's a risk associated with getting them wet or being too cold. So we're fairly conservative most of the year climbing in double boots. You will see the guides most of the year in double boots. The more we do this, the more micro cold injuries we get. And like there's some research starting to point to people who spend a career in cold environments actually get worse at managing cold in their bodies. So the classic example is like the older Mount Rainier guide that has the most puffy stuff and is in like down booties at camp when everyone else is in flip-flops. Real. So take care of yourself, be comfortable, have all the layers, and really a big part of climbing is learning how to take care of yourself so that you're comfortable and safe. The backpack. This one needs to be, what's the liters? Do we say 60? Where is it? There it is. We say 55 to 75, so it's right in the middle. To pull off a 55-liter pack, your personal kit better be dialed. That is small, a little bit aggressively small, but doable. And if you are a smaller person, strongly recommend trimming as much as you possibly can. The best place to reduce bulk and weight is in your sleep system. In your sleep system, the way to get more warmth for the weight is actually in getting a warmer sleeping pad. So those have a thermal factor as well, R values it's called. Those, because when you are sleeping on top of a sleeping bag, you're squishing the insulation. You don't get the insulation on the whole bottom side of the sleeping bag. I don't recommend down quilts. Those, they have a gap. Those attach, it's like a quilt that nestles over a sleeping pad. Those just aren't sealed enough for mountaineering. That's not quite the right application yet. Great for backpacking, but not where we're going. Great. Yeah, here's a resource. Oh, look, I wrote it. That's awesome. Thanks, Mary, for steering. I have a lot to say about backpacks. My single worst injury in my 20-year-long guiding career has been from heavy packs. And it involves like, you have to learn, your body has to learn how to carry it well. And by that, I mean with practice and proper strength training and core and posture. And you have to learn how to properly pack it. We can help you with that. And you can find resources here. So read through our resources, really take advantage. The more, when we were talking about the bandwidth that you gain by training and showing up with excellent fitness, another area that you can show up with extra bandwidth is having read through a lot of these materials to understand more about your packing. I recommend with your training, don't just put plate weights, sandbags, water jugs in your pack, put your actual gear in it. Fill the pack out entirely so you get used to how it packs and you get faster. That's one thing that guides do on the regular that helps us to just not even have to think or expend energy on how our backpack works. So gaining familiarity with it and learning how to pack it so that it's the most comfortable for you. You can still use sandbags and water and everything to up the weight as you need to in training, but pack your real pack. And if you don't have one, if you're going to rent one, do the best you can with something similar. You know, even if you're training with like a 35 or a 40 pack that's maybe a little extra heavy, that can work. Great. On the summit climb, your guides will coach you on how to streamline that pack, and you can read about it in this article as well. But we'll go from carrying lots of gear on day one, and then carrying more of that lots of gear on to high camp. And then we'll leave stuff there and we climb with a lighter pack on summit day. And on summit day, the terrain gets a little bit more dynamic. It's a little more scrambly. So it's really good to downsize your pack, button up all the things, take the lid off and put it inside the pack. There's lots of things that your guides will help you to do to make that pack feel smaller and comfortable and carry more comfortably for the summit time. That is it for gear. I have a little bit to say about snacks. And Mary, I know that's our favorite topic. So are we ready for snack chats? Oh, I think you're muted. Well, cool. Yeah, and keep any questions coming as we're wrapping up here. Snacks are some of the most important things. Obviously, that's your fuel. Some of the basic stuff is for our female guests. There is a lot of improvement in the research around how training and exercise and the female physiology needs different things. And one of those things is potentially cycle dependent, having more calories than you are accustomed to. So tending to hydration and calorie intake, cycle dependent, can be crucial and very manageable. And that's just another thing that's helpful to know so that you can plan and prepare and make it a non-issue and make it so you're not feeling impacted. That largely has to do with fluctuations in basal body temperature and how that impacts your performance. So there's that. Then snack-wise, some of the stuff I'm most excited about is actually the research coming out about the microbiome. So that's like the bacterias and all the bugs in your gut, basically, that help you digest your food. And what we're starting to learn, which makes tons of sense to me as an aging mountain guide, and having gotten to a later time in my career and watching me and all of my cohort and age group really starting to just eat much better food. I take vegetables on the mountain. I take dip for like those like hummus or like cheesy dips, things like that, high calorie, really dense. I avoid dehydrated foods and bars. However, I carry plenty of them, or not carry, but I will have at least one a day. That said, but I'm careful. I'm not only eating like beef jerky and bars. I'm eating things that are like real, well, I guess that are like real food, like properly hydrated. I'll take radishes, celery, things like that. And I will even carry cucumbers. I really like to hydrate with real food, and we're learning that that is an effective way to stay hydrated with proper food. That said, it can get heavy. So really tending to your balance there. And the other thing is things will stay, you'll be on snow. So it's not super a big concern about things staying not what am I trying to say? Going bad. Even cheese, it might sweat a little bit, but things usually don't go bad in that amount of time. And they stay cold. And of note there, the reason for the quality of the food is we're starting to learn too that what you eat helps you improve how you process your food. So if you're eating a bunch of junk, you're not getting the nutrients that you need to support all of your body systems. And there's a lot of body systems that are going to get taxed in this 3-day climb. So I will I'll have lots of calories, plenty of calories for the climb. And then I will add things like little packages of olives. Artichoke hearts are some of the healthiest things. They're just really good for your gut and ensures that you're staying balanced on all of the micronutrient side of things so that you can actually absorb and use the fuel that you're feeding yourself with. So that's what I got to say. And I'll stop talking. Right on. 1 minute to spare.
No. That was all great. In the chat, I popped the guidance we have on our website about snacks. There's like a sample snack pack there, which is based on whole foods. A really common one is people will bring slices of cold pizza for their day one snack. The guides do it all the time. And then I'm also going to pop in the chat back in, what is time? I don't know, 6 months ago, we did a webinar with Elisa Lieb from Uphill Athlete, who's their resident nutritionist, all about nutrition for mountaineering. It's super good. I'll pop it in the chat so you can watch at your leisure. She had all sorts of great advice. Do we have any other, are we on to the Q&A?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, Q&A. Let me pull up the Q&A. Oh, okay. Okay, let's see. I see there's a scheduled Rainier climb April 27th through 29th. Is there a downside to climbing that early in the season? Is the weather worse than June or July?
I can answer that, Mary.
Yes.
I personally love and prefer the earlier season climbs. It feels like just a really magical time to be on the mountain, and a time that is very amenable to climbing with lots of snow and temperamental. So there you can always get a shutdown storm any time of the year. So I like cannot say like, oh, just climb in July, you'll be fine. Like the numbers can be like, maybe there's a little more success. I think we've looked at this over time, and like the moment we say that, then like you show up on the one trip that gets completely shut down in like July and like so-called prime time. So what happens is you have a more of a, in my experience, more of a propensity for weather earlier in the season, and then a little bit more firm circuitous conditions, slightly more challenging like footwork later in the season. So if you are strategizing where you want to put your challenge, that might describe what you would want to focus on. But like I said, I love the early season. It just feels like a powerful, beautiful time to be up on the mountain.
Dun, 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 dun. Oh, any tips for strength training for the descent? I climbed Mount
Mhm.
Baker with Alpine Ascents a couple of years ago. And while the uphill went well, my legs felt weak and shaky on the way down. My training incorporated a lot of stair stepper time, which I realized did not prepare me for the downhill.
Yeah, I think basic leg strength training like back squats, front squats, goblet squats, any of those you can do. And if you can work up to a pistol squat, that's a single leg squat, that would be really good. Your body weight pistol squat would be very comparable to what you need to do to step down with one leg and a heavy pack. And that's real. I'm not exaggerating. Like I if you want that descent to be easy, then at least you want to be able to do a pistol squat for real. It's like kind of a lot, but lots of good things in that pistol squat too. You can find online some really great progressions from various trainers that will be like just maybe stepping down from a step, for example, and working up to it. It also helps with mobility and the eccentric action of the muscle, which is what you would find from getting destroyed by the descent. It is where an eccentric action of the muscle is where you are lengthening a muscle while it's under load rather than contracting, which you are contracting the muscle under load. Hopefully that makes sense. Yep. You have more on that in this video. And leg strength. We have lots of resources that anticipated these great questions. And yeah, hopefully that answers that more or less.
Perfect. And I popped the link to the blog written by Lyra with also a video demoing some of those exercises in the blog. So check it out.
Yeah.
You have just put a wealth of information on the Alpine Ascents website. I forgot about all these blog posts until we were like, wait a minute, where's a blog post about that?
That's amazing. That's some good stuff over there.
This is another training question. How early should we start carrying a heavy pack in our training? This person's working up to 40 pounds.
My opinion on this, and feel free to examine, try different things, and give yourself lots of time. My opinion on this is that random is better than progressive overload. So strength train your core, honestly, Olympic weightlifting, like back squat, front squat with good coaching in person. If you've never done it, that's crucial because those types of activities are very high risk of injury. And the benefit with good form is tremendous to your ability to carry a pack well. So strong push in that way. You can work with any strength training professional to coach you on those kinds of big body movements. Yeah, can recommend. When to introduce the heavier pack, the uphill athlete will give you a lot on that. If that's not working for you, I don't remember exactly what they said, but sometimes I have seen lots of athletes do a really good job with a more progressive, like now add this amount of weight to your pack and just keep building and building and building over time. And having also watched a lot of guides who are professionals year round do the same thing, if you are someone who is starting to have more of a year-round mountain habit, doing random heavy backpack things, kind of random, kind of strategic, mimicking what you are going to experience on mountain is really helpful. So I do not train with a pack, for example, but most of my year I will have a 20 to 30 pound pack on my back when I'm doing things outdoors. So if you can make 20 to 30 pounds normal for your body, start with that. And so build up to that just being like standard year round. And then take on, after having done plenty of strength training and tending to posture, even things like Pilates are really good for this. After doing some of that, then start to throw a heavier pack into the mix. And as you get like a couple of months out from your training or from your objective, start properly mimicking the climb. So that's going to be a heavy pack on day one of a weekend and a long day, 5,000 foot day, and then lighter pack, but longer day with a rest day kind of in the middle. But if you do 2 or 3 days, something like that would be your guideline.
Okay, it's 12:07, so we will wrap up the final 3 questions in the chat. We have a theme about altitude sickness. Tahoma is over 14,000 feet, 14,411 feet to be precise. How, in your opinion, how should people think about altitude and mitigating the effects?
It's such a good question. I think the best answer is just arrive really fit, and we help you with the rest. There is not much you can do at this elevation to really set yourself up other than like climbing to as high as you possibly can before your climb and somehow getting up to 10,000 feet, spending a significant amount of time there, like a day. Would be your best bet, because acclimation is what it takes. The way we've designed the climb logistically is to sneak up to 14,000 feet and back before you feel the impacts of altitude in an unhealthy way, and it works. So the rare human will feel the impacts. Usually the impacts are compounded by other factors, like someone was maybe a little under the weather, didn't feel right, or didn't arrive with adequate fitness.
And then also, I would put a plug in for making sure you're adequately hydrated as well, because the effects of dehydration, especially at altitude, the air is super dry, can make you feel a lot worse than you would otherwise. So make sure.
Excellent. Yeah,
really.
thanks, Mary. Big time. Especially when it's hot.
Yeah, it's very hot sometimes. Let's see. I'll answer this next one. How soon does a planned trip know if their trip will be canceled due to weather? It's a great question. Tahoma is a big mountain, and oftentimes it can create its own weather. So we look at like very many forecasts, but there is a sort of like uncertain element about like what exactly the mountain will dish us on a day-to-day basis. So it's actually pretty uncommon that we would look at the forecast and cancel a climb due to weather, because it is pretty variable about what actually happens. The times where we are likely to cancel a trip in advance is at the end of the season. We talked about earlier in the webinar that the route changes over the course of the season as the seasonal snowpack melts. Maybe the guides are rerouting, adding ladder here, doing a turnaround or crevasse there. And sometimes if it's been a really hot summer, we didn't get a big snowpack near the end of the season, September, the route can get to a place where it is very hard to piece together a route that falls within our risk management, our risk assessment, what we feel comfortable guiding with it being a climb without any prerequisites. So in that case, we would cancel a climb in advance. And if that would happen, we'll let you know with as much advance notice as we can. As the route changes, sometimes it looks like it's not be able to put back together, but then crevasses, collapse and shift, and suddenly there's a new path to the summit. So there's a lot of variables, but if we do have to cancel your climb due to a late season issue with the viability of the route, we will offer you a full refund and give you preferential booking for the following year. There's
Mary, I'll add.
Oops, sorry.
Okay.
Oh, I did pop a little blog piece in the chat about how the route changes over the course of the season.
That's awesome. Mary, from my perspective, I would add a training tactic to help with that, because mental training is also part of it. And the mountains are, they can be harsh, and sometimes they have their own opinion of things and we don't get to climb. And, you know, a great thing to add to your training is a goal setting process that doesn't focus on the outcome, but rather on the process. And so if during your training, you are really connecting to the gains that you're making, the enjoyment of that process, and it can be a bunch of things, and the progression that it's setting you up on, then that can lead to a sustainability that's ultimately really gratifying, where like, if you have a long career in climbing, there are going to be lots of mountains you don't climb. And then you're going to have these magical, wonderful experiences that you're like, wow, I really feel like I earned that. And that's a really great thing. That's where it gets into your lifestyle and feels really enriching. If your only goal is to like tag the summit and that's it, and you have nothing beyond that, then your emotional risk is much higher on this climb. So that's something you can do. And then we are going to do our best to make sure that the route is available.
And then one final question before we wrap it up for today. Sleep deprivation on the climb. How do people, what are your thoughts? How can people ensure that they get, or set themselves up to ensure that they get a good amount of sleep on the trip?
Totally. And I actually answered another one that was asking about how to gauge if you can climb 1,000 feet per hour. I had a follow-up question to that, if that person wants to re-ask it, just based on terrain. So that there's a lot more behind that I can't really give you a good answer without knowing what is available to you. But for sleep, the best thing, no, Hill's got it. Sleep is going to be terrible, guaranteed. I think that doing the best you can to come as rested as you possibly can, and starting now to cultivate a solid sleep habit can be really helpful. It is going to be a challenge. Yeah, I think it speaks to, again, arriving with plenty of fitness and a strong nutrition strategy, and just tamping down all of the stressors, because sleep will be one of them. It's going to be uncomfortable, maybe loud, bring earplugs, make sure your sleep kit is comfortable and warm. And I would encourage you to practice with all of your gear, and like go out and sleep on the ground or somewhere in similar equipment, similar scenario. And it doesn't matter too much. You can climb on very little sleep, I promise. I'm not proud of it, but I do it a lot. The no hills athlete, stair steppers are great. The trouble is you can't go downhill as easy. Stair steppers, the type that rotate, are better than the type that just go down, if that makes sense. There's like pedals, and then there's another one that's like a stair on a treadmill. Actual stairs in buildings, really tall buildings, that can work well. And then to figure out your 1,000 feet per hour, your building might be the best bet. I don't know how those kind of step mills, I'm not sure how they calculate vertical. But I would encourage anyone training for a big mountain to make a trip prior. And that would be earlier in the season, come out and climb Mount Adams with us as a warm-up. Would be a very enriching experience.
Wonderful. Or also Colshan is a great warm-up mountain as well. And the North Cascades are so beautiful. It's awesome.
Yeah. I like these floating thumbs up on the new iteration of Zoom.
Well, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in during your whatever part of the day this is for you. It was really great having you here. Great questions. Lyra, thank you so much. This was an awesome presentation. I feel like pretty psyched. Like, should I climb Rainier again this summer? Maybe. For those of you who maybe tuned in late, or there was like a nugget of one of the many nuggets of wisdom that Lyra shared earlier that you didn't quite catch, this webinar is being recorded and we'll put it up on the Alpine Ascents blog in probably a couple of days for you to refer to back later. We do have a couple other webinars coming up this month, also hosted by Lyra and myself. We'll have one tomorrow at 5 p.m. for those of you who are interested in more ski mountaineering, so you want to get to the top, but also ski down. That'll be at 5 p.m. Pacific time tomorrow. It'll be super fun. And then later this month, on the 26th of February at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, we'll have a webinar about mountaineering courses. If you want to take a deep dive into all the mountaineering courses that we offer, whether it's a 6-day course, 8-day course, 10-day course, these are all very vague names. Do tune in and we'll take a deep dive on those. I think that is it. One final question, Lyra, from me to you. What is your favorite part about guiding this mountain?
Oof. The magic doesn't wear off.
All right. True. Great sunrises.
Yep.
All right. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Enjoy your Tuesday, Wednesday, Tuesday.
Tuesday.